Hey, it's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. We are getting ready to solder up the Stanley Iceman. There's going to be a lot of headshots in here. I think I've got the right camera angle where it'll show mostly what I'm doing. So let's get to work. I got the solder iron already heated up. This is our victim right here, and I've already tinned these two wires. Now, I'm going to try to see. Yeah, it's going to be close. I'm trying to show you guys what we're doing. Volume pot right here for the neck pickup, which will be the closest one to the neck. I have to put the black lead, which is right here, and I've already tinned it, is got to go to this lug. Now, this can get really tricky, especially with micro wires, because they really don't like to hold on to anything. They're so flimsy. But what I do is I tin them, I get them curled around, and try to get it to where it actually hooks onto the lug. And without a close-up camera, that's really hard to explain, but I think you understand what I mean. And then if there's any extra left over where something can hit it, I will snip it off with some flush cut micro pliers. So be careful you're not touching anything else. Just a dab on the end. We're going to touch it and solder it just like so. And that is as quick as it should take to solder that wire onto the lug. And we're good. Nice silver, bright silver solder joint, and it has grabbed. The next one is the green and bare. You have to kind of bend that harness down and somehow get it to stay in place where we're going to put it on the back of the pot. Now, it tells me to actually put it on that ground lug, but I'm not going to do that. It's just too much. I might, because I can kill two birds with one stone. Ground is ground. I think, yeah, because actually the wire will hold into the lug, and that's supposed to be the ground. So we're going to do that. Let's just bend it slightly. And boy, this is tiny, meticulous work, and it's really hard to film, but you guys have been with me every step of the way so far, so let's try to finish it. Now, you're not going to see everything, because some of this stuff I'm just going to do off camera because it's too meticulous, and it's just all you're going to see is the back of my head. So we have to try to get that wire up into that lug, hold itself enough to where it's going to solder to the lug, and the lug will solder to the back of the pot. And I think we're there. I know that doesn't make any sense without seeing it. Trust me when I tell you. We'll tin our solder iron and get her hot. And I believe we are there. Like that. I'm pretty sure we can live with that. I think that the lug catch. Nope, the lug did not catch. We have to make sure that the lug had a little bit of a space. So we gotta make sure that we're heating the lug and the back of the pot. Bear with me. Oh, baby, you can do it. Check that. Generally, I don't like to go back to a joint multiple times. Yeah, that's not helping us. We're unable to heat up the back of the pot enough. All right. Stand by. So we're back. Note to self, don't ever try to bend the lugs. Against my better judgment, I was trying to bend the lug over to the pot, the back of the pot, and solder it. And you can't get enough heat. So all I did was take a small jumper to ground that. One of them has the pickup, and that's really all we're wiring up right now is the pickups to the pots first. So ground from that lug to the back of the pot, ground from that lug to the back of the pot, and then the grounds from the pickup, the neck pickup, and the hot wire from the neck pickup. The center lug is going to receive a wire, one of these wires over here from the three-way switch. Okay, but for today, all we're concentrating, right now, this moment, all we're concentrating on is getting our pickups set. And we're trying to wire them into the lugs where they belong. And that brings us to the bridge pickup, which we have to put these two together. I know this is tedious as all get out, but I've been wanting to show you guys some of this for a long time. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I want to take that down. That's the red and white wires that we taped off from the last video. These particular ones, we don't use them, so you solder them together and you tape them off, as per Seymour. And as I've said many times, Seymour has never let me down yet. Well, this one's different. Usually I'm doing a Les Paul or a Stratocaster or something such as that. This one's a little bit different. And I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but we're going to find out together. So we'll get those out of the way, because really all we need is the green and the bear. We're going to solder that tip together, and we're going to tin the end of that, which is the hot wire. So let's do it. Tin our solder iron. And that's that. And that is that. Clean it, dab it, make sure you don't have too much excess on there. You want to keep it tinned, but you don't want it to be clogged up on there. Now, so far, I like this solder station. When you put the iron in there, if it goes too long, it senses. What kills your solder iron tip is if you keep it on for too long, and this stuff takes time, and you leave it in there, and it just keeps heating and heating and heating and heating, and you'll burn up your tip. This will eventually, after a few minutes, will read that, oh, it's idle. It's going to, it's off camera, but it's going to read it that it's idle, and it will start to back off the power to it. So, that being said, the next spot we need to, and this is where it's going to get tricky, because I've already put that jumper wire there, and we need to put our ground from the bridge pickup to it. Yeah. We could ground it to the back of the, you don't have to ground it to that, but if there's enough hole poking through, which there is, that's where I'm going to put it. Because it would be cleaner and look better. Let's get in there and just see, because then the other black one has to go to that lug. And the center lug, again, is going to get something from the switch. Yahtzee. Are you following me? Probably not. This is why I haven't filmed a solder job, because it's such small, tiny, meticulous work. But let's just see what happens. Got that one in there. Will it stay? I don't know. See, I like to put a hook on it, get it through the lug, and then tighten the hook before we put heat and solder to it. And it's tricky. I'm not gonna lie to you. It isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. And you want to keep the wires out of the way as much as possible, because later on we have to still solder something to the center lug. And these tiny micro wires, it doesn't take much to burn them and ruin everything you've done up until that point. So far I like that. I think that if we just pinch it a little bit. Is my head really in the way? Probably. Yeah. Let's solder that one. Little tin on the end of your iron. Hit the lug. And that's it. That little tiny wire, that's all it takes. Now, the next one goes there. Put our little hook on it. Make sure we're doing the right thing here. I always refer, not afraid to look at the instructions. Even though I've done this a million times. Get your hook started. Get it down on the lug where you want it. And then squeeze that bitch together. That's all it takes. Nice silver solder joint. I know why they use these micro wires now, because it takes so little to get them set where they need to be. And I was hoping to be able to pull this down and hide it over there, and we will be able to do that after. Sometimes you gotta bend things out of the way. That's your ground. That's your hot. We're gonna put a switch on that lug right there. And we're almost at the point where we're gonna start putting switch wires. In fact, I think we are. I'm going to pause really quickly, and then we're going to check this out, and I'll get right back to you. So here's where it gets interesting. We have this whole jumble of wires over here. They come from the three-way switch. You have two whites, which is one pickup and then the other, And then you have the yellow, which is the center position, which should have both the pickups working. That has to go to our tone pot. Now, it looked like that. So you jumble the wires, you pull your yellow one out. Yeah, in this particular application. And the way that I have everything put together in here, we're able to tuck the yellow down and bring it around to where it's out of the way of everything. Now these wires that I'm using for this are just pushback. You don't have to bare them. They're pre-tinned on the inside. You just push the sleeve back and it gives you just enough to hit your lug. Now we've got about that much too long, so I routed it down there. It's got to go to this. This is the outside of the body. It's got to go to this lug right here. The outside lug facing the second volume pot. So I'm going to snip it off right about there, and that'll give me plenty to work with. Don't be afraid of cutting wires. It's almost like drilling into somebody's guitar body. And then you just kind of push these back, and the sheet, you don't have to strip it. It's not plastic. It's like a cloth. Put my other bionic guys on. And same principle, we're going to put a hook on it, and we're going to try to get it around into that lug and then squeeze it together to get it ready to solder. Like so. I'm sure my head is in the way. I hope it's not. Doesn't matter. I don't think you can see a whole lot of this. And, yep, she's ready to solder. Heat, and a little bit of solder. I like the way this solder station is working. The tip is staying nicely tinned. The sensor is working properly. I don't know why I didn't have one of those before. A long time ago. Nice little solder joint. You push the sleeve up. Now it's basically done. Next, we're going to put the white, which is one of them I can pull and tug on it and know which one it is. That's the left one. And that's got to go to the neck pot there. The center lug right there. Yeah. Again, we got about a mile too much. Let me make sure we're going to the right. We're going to the exact right one. The center lug is going to go, or I'm sorry, the left lug. Yeah. So if it's that one, it's this one. We want that to go to the bridge. We want that to go to the bridge volume. Bridge volume center lug. Again, got about that much. Too much. We're going to cut that off right about there. I love the pushback wire. You just push it back. Put your loop. Isn't this tedious? Isn't this fun? Get a nice little hook on there. It doesn't need to be that big. guys. Center lug, bridge volume. You follow? And then pinch it slightly. And we're going to hold it down out of the way, because I don't want it coming near either one of the other lugs. Let's not have anybody touching other things that they don't need to be touching. That's a nice little joint too. Come over here. Everything is staying nicely tinned. I think that sensor gig is working really nicely on that solder station. Test your joint, nice and silver. It's not dull. That's what you like. You don't want a dull, faded solder joint. You want it to look like a nice shiny dime or a shiny coin. And yeah, I think everything is going to push down and get out of the way perfectly once we get everything done. Okay, so that wire we can get out of the way and down in the pocket. Let's get this wire under it. It seems to want to go that way. And push this down. And once I get my head out of the way, you can start to see how nice and neat and clean the cavity is going to be if the camera picks up on that. You see how nicely the wires are going to run around, only go to where they need to go, and all the excess is just long enough to stay out of the way, if that makes any sense. You don't want your wires hanging out everywhere and big globs of solder. You want just enough solder to hold your joint together and make the connection. That's all you need. You don't need to go, you know, the bigger the blob, the better the job is not the way to go. I'm going to pause quickly. I'm going to refer, then we're going to get ready to put the center lug solder joint on the neck volume. Stand by. Okay, so we have the other white wire that comes from our three-way switch. That's going to the neck pot. It's got to go onto the center lug, and we have to be very mindful because we already wired the pickup wires to it. Sorry, my head's probably totally in the way, but this should only take a brief amount of heat. Mind my head, mind all the other wires. Put a little heat to it and a little solder, and we're golden. And then we're going to be able to tuck everything nice and neat. I'm going to shut the solder station down just briefly because I don't need it right now. So that's our three-way switch wire. I want to tuck it, get it out of the way, and I also want to tuck our pickup wires out of the way. So these wires are not going to move around in here. Once the cover plate goes on here, these things can't move. They're soldered. They have space between them. You know, look at any guitar cavity. You know, they just can't be touching things that they're not supposed to be touching. That's all. But you want them to look as neat as possible. You want to get them down in the cavity and routed around in such a way that they're not all cattywampus and, you know, you should have seen the mess that was in here. When I took this guitar apart many moons ago, referred to some old videos, they had old 1980s gold plastic cover speaker wire connecting the pickups to the volume pots. I don't know how they stuffed all that stuff through the cavity and the router holes. But now it looks nice and neat and nice and clean, and everything's going to be Jake, I think. Everything's out of the way and connected. Sorry for my fat head. I'm just double checking. I'm going to make sure nothing's ever going to touch. And once you get it set, that's it. It's done. So at this point, we have a ground. And the ground, we still have to put a ground from this pot to this pot to this pot. You have to connect all three of them. There will be a small ground jumper that goes from here to here, and a small ground jumper that goes from here to here. Okay? And then the main ground wire from the three-way switch, that goes around to the first pot. Okay? And then all we have to do is put our wire up our output jack. And basically, this thing is ready to make noise. We're getting a little long in the tooth on this video. I'm not going to do all of this and this yet. That's going to be part 3. This is part 2 that we're filming now. Or is it part 3? I don't know. I've lost. Yeah, this is part 3 or part 2, part 3, whatever. This is part 3. We're wiring up the cavity. The last thing we're going to do is wire this up. If I can find the output jack, and I have this thing already heated up, I mean, it's really only, we have to go from the center lug to a ground. Yeah, it's in this particular case, it's another 5 solder joints. So for today, we're going to call that good. I want to show you one more time how that looks. If you do it right and take your time, let me get you in the movie. If you do it right and take your time, that's what a control cavity should look like. All your wires nice and neat, nice and clean. They're running in the right directions. Nothing's touching. There's not big globs of solder on there, okay? But it takes a long time to learn how to solder like that and do it right. I got to say, it helps the micro wires, because they're not as big and they're much easier to work with. They take heat very quickly, a little dab of solder, and that's it, they're done. Where the old wires, like these big fat, the black and the white and the yellow ones, those are bigger and they take up more space in the cavity too, by the way. And as you can see, there's not a lot of cavity to work with there. So next installment's going to be that guy right there. We're going to wire up an output jack. We're going to get the rest of the ground wires put together, and then we're going to start tapping on pickups to see if it works. That'll be a happy day when I can finally put strings back on this instrument and make it play and make music again. It's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. If you dig what I'm doing, like and subscribe. Go to my website if you have guitars that you need fixed. I'm in Fort Lauderdale area. We'll talk soon.